See, Mohamed, it's so good to have you.
The pleasure's all mine, my friend.
This is a little harder than I thought.
It's not. I think this is your first podcast. And you just have to wing it until you find the right medium. That's the podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know if the right etiquette is to take the hat off. Is it polite to take the hat off or keep it on? By the way, I know you're a big fan of hats, so I brought you a little gift. I brought you a beanie.
Oh, man.
So
Thank you
I
so
see
much.
that on your videos. You're
Thank
the kind
you
of guy
so much.
who's been juggling like
Yes.
200 hats or something like that.
Yeah, I know. I love to put some
that's like
on my head.
201.
Thank
Try
you
it
so
on,
much.
see how it looks. Man, it looks good on you.
For real?
I think you look good on
Let
it.
me see. Let me see. I can look at myself.
Oh, boy.
Thank you so much.
Splendid, man. Splendid.
You're spoiling me. You're spoiling me.
It looks good on you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome.
We're in this. I mean, not in my wildest dreams.
Yes.
I would have thought that we would be shooting in a place like this.
Yeah.
I've already set like the locations where I'm going to shoot my podcasts. Beautiful place in Casablanca. They have a place in Casablanca, Zarqtoni, and another place in Agdad. It's called the place is called Commons. It's a co-working space. Beautiful place, and I'm planning to shoot my next episodes there. But the moment we walked here, I was like, this clicks. My first episode has got to be here.
I'm telling you, it really grabs your heart. This place is, I don't know what it is about, Islamic architecture that is so captivating. I know that the way it's done, I'm not going to claim to be a savant or an erudite in Islamic architecture, but I could tell you I like it. Just to get it out of the way, I love it. Yeah. But it's done with such symmetry. All these shapes that you find, like the squares, the triangles, the circles, and the polygons, and the repetition in the patterns, induces some sort of, balance, order, harmony. And really, that's what it's all about. Because when you're here, that harmony is the one that induces the serenity that you feel inside.
Absolutely.
See, when you see beauty, right, we always say, I saw a beautiful XYZ. I saw this thing but no one has ever said, well, I'm not going to say no one, but very often, rarely when people say, I felt beauty. Well, this is where you actually feel the beauty. You feel it deep down inside. You feel it in your bones. And that's the one place where I feel so at peace. By the way, the location in Zarqtoni, as you mentioned, is literally 5 minutes from my house in Casablanca.
Yes.
It's a stone throws away from my house.
Yeah.
But we had to drive all the way down here because it's worth it. Look at the beauty of this place.
It is worth it.
People will get a chance to visit Riyadh al-Amin in the city of Fas, in the old Medina, and enjoy just the beauty of what this place has to offer.
I told you earlier, imagine, man, like our grandfathers must have lived day to day like this. They must have woken up every day to an open roof, and to vegetation and water. I mean, these elements that are present at all times. Yeah. There has to be something.
Lighting, water, and greenery.
Yes.
All three aspects.
Yes.
I mean, you go around here and there's vases everywhere. Then you look at all the windows. Again, I'm not a civil engineer, but I bet you anything, all of these, access of lighting, it's not just randomly placed. It's placed in such a way that it serves a purpose. And it all culminates in the idea of serenity that we talked about. You got water everywhere. You got a swimming pool here, but you got a water fountain on the other side.
Yeah.
But then again, when you walk around here, all you see is greenery. It catches your eye.
And daylight just gushing in.
Absolutely.
At all times until sunset.
It's natural daylight. I mean, lighting could not duplicate. This manufactured lighting, as we know it, could not be produced or substituted to natural daylight that comes from the ceiling or that comes from the windows that are all around this place.
Yeah.
It is definitely a fascinating place. There's not a time where I started coming here since its inception back in, well, not really. This place probably started, who was telling us it opened up in 2007?
Yes,
or something like that.
Yeah,
so I started coming here probably 2010, and Every time I visit Morocco, I have to make a pit stop. There's one time, and people laugh at me when I say this, where I took the شكرا merci شكرا جزيلا.
الله يحفظك أبو. شكرا جزيلا.
So I took a ride over here, all the way from Casablanca, had lunch, and just turned around and drove back. I just wanted to have lunch in this place.
Wow.
You know, it's a little extreme.
Came all the way from Casablanca.
All the way from Casablanca. It's a little extreme, a little eccentric, but I felt like it was worth it. I had to do it. So,
I mean, it must be special for you, particularly because you live in the U.S., right? How long have you been living in the U.S.?
I've lived, well, who's counting? You know, after you live, you know, when the first 3 or 4 years go by, you kind of lose count. However, I've been taking count. I think I've lived, well, 1989, August 1989 is when I landed there.
I was 2 years old when
I would
you moved
say,
to the US.
yeah, I feel like I'm old now that you say it.
No, but you've spent more time in the U.S. than you did in Morocco.
I did.
This is a very interesting thing.
So, in fact, when you think about it, my formative years, all of them, were spent in the U.S. You know, I opened my eyes in that country. That's why I feel like it's part of me as well. You know, when you think about it, I consider myself to be from Casablanca because that's where I was raised. I was born in the eastern part of Morocco. I was born in a small village very close to Oujda. But my parents, my entire lineage of ancestors, you know, were from, the very remote border city of Figuig. And it's such a privilege, and it gives me such a pride to say that I'm from Figuig because people have so much respect for people, you know, the rest of Morocco, I should say, have a lot of respect for people that are from Figuig.
Yeah. What's special about the place?
It is definitely a place where there's a lot of scholars. And the old tradition values is still maintained. So
to this day,
it's almost like they've kept, you know, modernity at bay and only kind of took it in increments as they needed it.
Okay.
So, but it's a beautiful place. Their primary activity is palm trees. So basically, that's where all the dates would come from.
Yeah.
But I was born in Tendrara. It's a small little town near there. And at the age of 7 or 8, you know, my father, because he was a businessman, you know, he was going back and forth from Tendrara to Casablanca doing business.
Yeah.
So I decided when it was time, especially there was no schools for us to go to, because at the time I think we only had the primary school, an elementary school. So the entire family just moved to Casablanca, and I've been there ever since. I think we moved in '77. You know, I was very young, 8 years old, and after that, you know, we let me see. I'm trying to date myself, and at the age of 20 is when I migrated to the U.S. So even Casablanca, when you think about it,
you spent 12 years there.
I've only lived there but not even 12 years, mind you, because I came to Fez and I spent 2 years in Fez.
Oh, yeah.
So I only spent 10 years in Casablanca. I went to university in Shuk in Casablanca, but was only there for 3 months because I just didn't like the system. So myself and a couple of friends, we just backpacked, and we hiked the Atlas Mountains for that first year of university.
Wow.
In other words, I just decided I'm not going to go to school. When the next year I signed up to go to school here in Fez.
Here?
Yeah, spent 2 years in Fez.
What'd you major in?
Well, University of Al-Qarawiyyin.
Wow.
I was, I don't know what was I thinking, because my dream job has always been, you know, to be a journalist. I don't know, I thought, you know, being a journalist is such a cool thing, and I wanted to be a journalist. In fact, I started writing articles when I was 15 or 16. There was a newspaper called Al-Mithaq Al-Watani. I don't know if it's still around, or probably it's out of circulation. And after that, it was a beautiful newspaper by the title of Al-Muntakhab. And I think the head of that newspaper was a gentleman by the name of Badr al-Din al-Idrisi. He's still around. He's a sports commentator, a sports writer.
Okay.
And he's got an amazing writing style. And I was just in love with his writing style. So I started trying to emulate him, copy him, and try to kind of read everything that he writes. And there were other people who had, even at that age, I could tell, a writing style from, a better writing style from a mediocre writing style, from just a poor writing style. There was a gentleman who became a minister later, I think Minister of Human Rights, by the name of Mohamed Brahimi. And he wrote for Al-Mitaq al-Watani. And he had a splendid, I mean, his plume is just very refined. He's an amazing writer.
So going back to your studies, you spent 2 years here.
So 2 years here.
In college?
In college here. Did my, I got my associate degree here, and I just couldn't stand it here. There was just too many strikes.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Did it coincide with what's referred to as the lead years?
No.
No?
Actually, the years of lead were the 80s.
Oh, the 80s.
Yeah, were the 80s. So I was still a kid then. I still remember, I have faint memories what happened in the early 80s.
Oh.
I don't know if it was 81 or something like that.
But you were there in Casablanca.
In Casablanca,
You're too young to remember.
Yeah, very young. But I still have faint memories of that, I can piece out very, flashes of memories here or there, but I couldn't tell you exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
All I know is things were not good.
Yeah. So went back, after 2 years, you went back to Casablanca?
I went to, after 2 years, at the end of the second year here, I've gotten my associate degree. Mind you, I had stellar grades, meaning my first year I had probably the highest grade. Second year, probably the second highest, but still one of the best grades. But I could not, stay here because it became so dangerous and risky, that I couldn't stay. And the thing is, I'm not going to sit here and point fingers, at one party or the other. Yeah. Because it was so bad that you didn't know who to hate. Was it
the Islamists?
Who else? There were so many factions within the student body that you didn't know who was who. Okay, but it was so fragmented. It was hostile. It was toxic, and it was time for me to just leave. In fact, when I told my dad I was going to go to the U.S., he didn't mind. Usually, he would say, "No, you got to, finish your studies." He says, "Oh yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
just
go
don't
for
stay
it."
here.
Yeah, and that's when I decided, you know what, I'm going to try the U.S. just for the hell of it. But I didn't go with the intention of not coming back. Like, it wasn't a plan. It was just a fleeting thought that crossed my mind, and I executed on it.
Just as you did with Fez, coming to
Just
Fez.
like I did with Fez.
Yeah,
just like I did with Fez. But with Fez, I don't know, there was this idea, after that child's dream of becoming a journalist, then there was a kind of a teenager's dream, or of a late teen dream of becoming a judge. Thank God I didn't follow up with that. Thank God. But I did go back to the U.S. I did go back to Casablanca, and I just thought, because there was a couple of kids in my neighborhood, all of them friends. There's a very, very close friend of mine and two brothers who were also in my neighborhood who got their visas to the U.S. And when you're that age, when you're 19, 20, you kind of want to do what your friends are doing, just for the heck of it. So I went and I applied for a visa, and they gave it to me. They, at the time, probably even a quack like myself was getting a visa. So I said, why not?
Were there too many people applying and
there were.
And going?
I mean, conditions were still stringent. I mean, they weren't just kind of, tossing visas right and left. No, it wasn't like that. But it wasn't as, strident as it is these days. Now it's even worse. Now we have to get an appointment and pay to get a visa.
Of course.
That does not guarantee getting a visa. You can just, you incur a cost. And that cost does not guarantee anything. In the old days, you just deposit your visa.
Was it a tourist visa that you applied
No, I actually applied for a B2 visa, which is a student visa.
It was B2 back then? Now it's F1.
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 Sorry, yeah,
F1.
I got the designation right. Wrong. So an F1 visa, which is student visa, only because my friend, following my friend's recommendations, who said, you know what, you have a better chance of getting a visa if you applied for a student visa. So I just applied for a student visa, and I applied for an English school. It was just an English school, not even a university or anything like that.
Yeah, that's cool.
And like I said, I was granted a visa. The process was a breeze, and I was told, come back at 4 o'clock and get your passport.
That's it.
Just came back at 4 o'clock. They gave me my passport. I believe they gave me a 2 years visa, and I went there. Let's say, so I got my visa in July, and a month later, August 24th. You know, they never forget those dates.
Yeah.
They become so ingrained in your head.
Yeah.
So August 24th is when I, hopped on the plane. That was my first time being on the plane.
Yeah.
It wasn't my first time going abroad. I went to France and Spain before that, but I hitched a ride with a family member. On the way back, I got on the train, on the ferry and the train and all of that. But as far as being on a plane,
that was the first time crossing the
exactly
Atlantic.
Crossing the Atlantic. That was my first time going there.
All right.
So the rest is history. 34 years of
fast forward.
Yeah.
34 years.
Yeah.
I remember this author whom I truly admired, Abdurrazzaq Gurna, is one of the few African writers who got a Nobel Prize.
Where is he from?
Zanzibar.
Oh, cool.
East Africa.
Yeah, East Africa. Yeah.
And he wrote like 10 novels about people living in diaspora, you know, leaving home, the effects of colonialism, what the Brits did and the legacy that they left in East Africa, and how that pushed future later generations to flee their homeland. So he writes about those who are caught between continents and cultures, those who are caught in a limbo. They have one foot here, one foot there. How does it feel?
It's kind of a very hard, question to answer in details. But I'll tell you, I've had a chance to think about it because there was a time when I juxtaposed the migrants' experience in North America or the U.S. and the Moroccan migrants' experience in Europe. So the generation of the 60s who were invited, almost begged to come to France and build it, or come to Europe and build Europe because they needed,
manpower.
They really needed manpower. They needed workers. So these people almost had a conflict. It's almost like when they didn't want their kids to become French, so to speak, It's almost like becoming French, even though they had kids in Europe, okay, they wanted nothing to do with that country where the kids were born, nor did they want the kids to have anything to do with that country, which is kind of impossible.
It is impossible.
With us, because I have to tell you, first of all, let's track back a little bit. When I got to the U.S., I got to Boston, Massachusetts. For your viewers, Boston is the capital of a state called Massachusetts, which is in the East Coast, the Northeast. It's sandwiched between, I'd say, New Hampshire and New York, depending what angle you come in from. Yeah. But it's there in the East Coast. And there were very few Moroccans there. I know there was a Moroccan who came there in the late 70s who went to Harvard University. I got to meet him later because I had worked at Harvard for a couple of years. But the majority of people who were there at the time, they were all newcomers. And when I say all newcomers, I'm talking, you could actually count them on two hands. 10, 20 maybe, if I were to even exaggerate, I'll say about 30 people. So when we got there, we lacked guidance and we needed, it's almost like we knew nothing about the country. We didn't speak the language. We had no money. We didn't know what to do with ourselves. It was just like discovering a new land. And we just had this, when you're young, when you're in your 20s, there was always this idea in your head that, things will work themselves out eventually, okay? And the level of stress is not as high as it is when you're much older because you start thinking about response. But when you're young, you kind of wing it. You just wing it, basically. Yeah. So, when I juxtapose these two experiences, I feel like the Moroccans who migrated to the U.S. almost learned from the European experience, okay? We actually wanted to gain a strong foothold in that country. So any attempt to alienate us as the other, any attempt to othering us and making us feel like the stranger, okay,
is unacceptable.
We wanted to see it at the table from day one. We wanted to be the Americans, okay, and we asserted ourselves. We're very assertive. This is our country as much as it is yours, okay, because in the collective psyche, there's always this idea that the American looked a certain way. The American was blonde, had blue eyes or green eyes, but looked nothing like us. So we kind of, in fact, I don't know if I'm going out of order here, but when I decided to publish a newspaper, when I graduated from college, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go and start my first media experience. So I published a newspaper. I had a friend from Casablanca also who helped me out with that. It was called Al Arab News. So in that newspaper, we had an agenda, basically. The agenda is, we wanted our people, Arabs and Muslims, to step up to the plate. We wanted them to come on and play ball. We wanted to explain to them this idea of we're here for a certain period of time and we're just going to amass money and leave. It will never pan out. This is a myth, okay? So we wanted to tell people, you want to be treated like, the owner of the land. You got to come out and own a stake
and get involved
in this land. Get involved,
have a say.
Be civically engaged.
Yeah.
And just like Woody Allen said, show up.
Show up.
90% of success, like Woody Allen says, is showing up. So we wanted people to show up, okay? And
did it work out?
I think to a certain extent, to a great extent, it has worked out. People started, because in the beginning when we started publishing articles telling that, there's people who almost thought this was blasphemous. This person is telling us to leave. It's almost like asking someone to leave Islam or something like that. Like, wait a minute. Your religious persuasion has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Yeah. In fact, keep your religious, persuasion. This is a country where you can, to the credit of the U.S., I think the U.S. is a place where you can practice your religion freely. You can open up as many mosques as you want. Nobody would bother you.
Absolutely.
By the power of the law.
Yeah, and I want to mention something in that respect. When I went to the U.S., I was more westernized than I came back from the U.S., believe it or not.
Yeah.
Meaning, I went there with an afro.
Yeah.
And with shredded jeans, right? And I remember playing a guitar on stage there in college and elsewhere.
Yeah.
So I went there like more American than I came back.
Then you came back.
And there I shaved my head off, and grew a beard. There I felt more connected. I
to your religion,
exactly,
it gives you perspective.
I felt a need, yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
As Edward said, sometimes you have to leave to see better.
Yeah. You take a balcony seat. Yeah. When you take a balcony seat, you take 2 steps back, take a balcony seat, then you have a wider view of what's going on.
Absolutely.
Okay, and U.S. has offered most of us that opportunity. Like we took a balcony seat and we found that even our religious, roots that we didn't maintain, okay, we didn't keep up with, we went back and, became more of a practice in Muslims than we were before. Yeah, and this is not my experience. This is an experience that I've found to be exactly the same with a majority of people that I've talked to.
True.
So it does give you a perspective, and I think it's not even that abnormal, or this is not an aberration. It's more like the norm.
Yes.
What we found with that.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So.
Coming back home, you do visit quite often.
I do.
I mean, compared to others I know who live in the U.S.
Correct. So in the old days, I visited probably, I have to say, the frequency of visits has increased as I've lived. The longer I lived there, the more I come and visit often. So the reason being, I think, is my parents have gotten older, and it was only fair that I would visit them more frequently than I did. So there was times when I visited every other year. There's times when I, wouldn't come for 2 or 3 years. Then I'll come the 3rd year. But as my parents got older, And when my father got sick, or God rest his soul, he passed in 2011.
Allah
you know, Allah yarhamu. And so I came here very often. I would even, visit 3 times a year. And my mother now is old, and I have my siblings whom I love dearly.
So you have to come and see them.
Yeah, so I have to
course.
come and see them, and I come and visit the family. So my brothers, my sisters, and my mother who's still in Casablanca, so I visit with them. Even, in the winter time, I would come by myself, so I'd come and visit, But in the summertime, I'd bring my wife and kids with me, and we would visit and travel here in Morocco.
Speaking of kids, would you say it's harder for a Moor, a Moroccan, a North African, a Muslim, to raise his kids in the U.S. than it would be here in Morocco?
I don't know. When you say harder, then what standards are we using? That's why, it's hard to just answer definitively that question, because people have had a great success raising their kids in the U.S. and people have failed miserably right here in Morocco in raising their kids. So I think the idea of raising kids has to do with the dedication of the parents. And the more dedicated you are to your kids, the better your kids will come up.
Regardless of environment, you think? It doesn't play much into...
I think as a parent, you become that regulator, that shield that shields them against, bad influences, for example. And it's basically you are, you're the one who shapes their personalities, and you're the one who raises them. The upbringing, right, falls squarely on your shoulder as a parent, mother or father. The problem that I see with the U.S. is it's a lot more demanding. And it's very easy to fall in the trap of becoming, a circus rat, basically. That rat race that we talk about?
Yeah.
It has sucked a lot of people in. And basically, and this is true of kids who were born and raised there, to non-Moroccans, to other nationalities, or people who've been in the U.S. for multiple generations. Just that the system is built in such a way that you feel like, life is caving in on you.
Yeah.
And there's all these bills, and you tell yourself, oh no, I gotta pay the bills, I need help, So what you do is as a man, you work outside the house for, 8, 12 hours, and the wife does the same thing, and what happens, the kid becomes that, I think there's a term for that, it's called a latchkey kid. Latchkey, in the old days, when American society shifted from being a one-income family to two-income family, kids came and they wouldn't find the key under the doormat, but they actually had a key on a chain, on a thing. So a latchkey kid, that's what the kid who came home to an empty home. And who raised these kids? It's the TV, it's the nanny, it's someone who doesn't really have a stake, has no stake in turn up these kids to be great members of society.
So what you're saying is, wherever these conditions exist, whether back there in the U.S. or here, then you'd have the same outcome. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that the environment is...
I think it's all about dedication, the time that you put in. It's an investment of time. It's the time. I just watched a podcast. Someone sent me a link to a podcast of an African-American who came with his 3 brothers when they were very young, with their father, to Casablanca in the Blue Villa, right by Masjid Hassan Thani. And their father's goal in life is for his kids to memorize the Quran. So he brought them all here. I think that kid was, at the time, was 8 years old, something like that. And they spent 4 years here until he was 12. And after that, they went back to the U.S. They studied in the U.S. until he was 17. I don't know what the age of his brothers, 17. Then 17 years old, the father decided time to go to Saudi Arabia and pick up all the, the Islamic jurisprudence sciences like al-fiqh and all that. So this father has this idea in his kid that he wanted, his kids to become religious scholars.
Okay.
And he dedicated his life to that, because there was one point where he had to leave them with a Moroccan family, go back to the U.S., and work that way, can send them money, because money was running dry and he didn't have any, so he went back. Luckily, there was a Moroccan family that took care of the kids. But at the same time, what was the mother doing? She was also sacrificing. The mother was in the U.S., she was an engineer, and she was working hard to send them the money. So it's all about dedication. It's how much time you want to put in, okay? The problem is, and I'm not here to blame people or to put anybody in the hot seat, but there is a price to pay for having a two-income family, okay? If you and your wife both have to work, have to go out there and fend for the family, there's a cost for that. And usually it comes at, the quality, the kids' expense. The way you raise your kids is not always, the way they come out is not always the way you want them to. So that's just my opinion. There are cases where, kids turn out okay, even though the parents, were not, they were absentee parents. But I would venture to guess, although I don't have any empirical data to back this up with, that this is only an aberration, an exception to the rule. But the majority of people, do suffer. And that's the kind of problems that we have in the U.S., when there's very little dedication with that. So going back to your question of, how do they feel? Like, was there this idea of not, where is it that I wanted to? And I think in my 4th year in the U.S., the idea of going back, it just left me. Like, I stopped thinking about going back. It's because I knew in order to have a peace of mind, I have to decide, okay, that, I am in the U.S., and I better start acting like I'm part of this society, okay, in order to have a peace of mind, and in order to, because the idea, because thinking about going back, it was such a heavy weight, that was weighing me down and impeding my ability, to move and to do things, because I just, I didn't know what to do with myself. The minute I decided, you know what, forget it, I'm here, okay, and I should just, do what it takes to make it here. I think things started falling in place after that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, by the way, for your audience, I feel like an imposter. You know what the imposter syndrome is?
Why do you feel like that?
It's because, I don't want people to think that, I have anything new to bring to the table.
No,
of course, this is a syndrome that most people from first generation people, experience. But, I don't feel like a fraud.
No.
I don't feel, but what I'm saying is, my experience is probably similar to the experiences of a lot of Moroccans and a lot of migrants.
Of course.
The only difference, I think, is, again, there's no data to back this up, is we're so much at peace with being Americans than our European counterparts.
Okay.
I see with my own nephews and nieces who were born in France or in Europe, and they struggle with the identity.
They're out of place.
Yeah, they feel like they feel like they don't know where to belong, who to belong to, who to identify with. For us, it's a settled case. It's a shut case.
Maybe it has to do with the fact that America, unlike Europe, is not it is not deeply rooted in history with its own people, with a distinct people who can claim, proudly claim that they are American.
I think I would disagree with that.
It's a country of migrants since its start.
True, that is a fact, an undeniable, uncontestable fact. However, there's always that fringe element there. I mean, if you look at the history of the KKK, for example, these are the extreme right, even the religious right, mind you. They're the ones who push these ideas. They have such a what do you call it, a migrant hate, discourse that, if you look at a certain way, like if you look the way I look, I would never be considered an American.
Unacceptable. Yes, of course.
To them, it's just not, mind you, if Anybody that wears hijab, to them, it cannot possibly be American.
Yeah.
You know, you could be the 20th generation American, although I don't even think that's possible. But you could be the 5th generation American, right? Well, it's a very young fledgling country. It's only 220 years, 240 years old.
That pillar right there ought to be older than
Older
the whole
than
country.
that, of course, especially in this city. This city is much older.
Yeah.
So this city is at least, what, 1250, something like that?
Yeah, 12 centuries.
Yeah, 12 something, yeah. So people, you know, because they feel like they're being replaced. You've probably heard about replacement theory. You know, the white Americans always have this phobia about being replaced. Yeah. You know, it's history. You know, they are going to be replaced. There's just nothing they can do about it.
Yeah, it's inevitable.
Yeah, especially when you think about their rate of reproduction is much lower than the rate of reduction of other ethnicities. So, I mean,
is there solid data in that regard?
I think there is, yes.
Really?
Yeah, simple math.
Wow.
Very simple mathematical equations, and you'll know that the white race will be replaced. So when I say the white race or the dominant race, always feels like, you know, they're being replaced, they're being pushed out. And we see it with what's going on lately in the neighborhoods of Boston. So there's a neighborhood that's, for example, being populated by Italian Americans or Irish Americans, and all of a sudden you find, you know, an assortment of you know, colors and races. So the older generation, you know, they become very tense because they come out of their homes in the morning and they see that the face of their neighborhood is not looking the same way. And that fear, and that induces fear. Fear of what? Fear of the unknown. Yeah. You know, they're not feeling good in their own skin because they see different people. You know, the kind of people that they used to are not the same. But they do one of two things, especially with the gentrification movement and the neighborhoods people being priced out of their neighborhoods. These people who actually own real estate, they just cash out. They cash out handsomely. You know, I mean, you bought a house for $100,000, all of a sudden somebody's offering you $1 million for it. You're not going to sit there and say, man, I hate my neighborhood because no one looks like me anymore. You just cash out, put the money in your pocket, and hightail it to a more, you know, to a more expensive neighborhood. Yeah. That's what's been going on, you know. Usually a bigot, you shut them down with a good argument or a good pot of cash. You know? That's usually what shut them up, is when they cash on, you just, you know, get the heck out of that neighborhood. Yeah. So,
well, I'm gonna go back to what you said earlier about telling, you know, telling your story as an immigrant, the story of the immigrant, the journey of the immigrant, is very interesting to me, and it's part. You asked me earlier, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this particularly in English? Yeah. Part of why I'm doing this is because I know a lot of people, a lot of Moroccans in diaspora, a lot of Moroccans in Europe and in North America. Yeah. And I talk to them all the time, and I hear their stories, and their struggle, and their longing to go back, longing to some distant past, which would never perhaps come back, right? And it's romantic. Yeah. And I know that they would be like on tenterhooks to hear stories that are similar to theirs, you see. So part of why I'm doing this in English is for them to relate to whoever is going to be on that seat, because like a great many of my guests will be, immigrants as well. Sure. And partly, of course, is the whole philosophy behind this, really. I contemplated the idea of doing a podcast in English in Morocco because I like the shift that has been happening from French to English lately in the past decade, particularly. I see that shift and it thrills me. I like it because I feel like we're distancing ourselves from all that is French, and I have nothing wrong. Like I have nothing against the French culture, the French language. Earlier, my friend and I were at a restaurant whose owner and the chef who cooks there is French. We love the guy, right? He's amazing. He's I wish for Moroccan restaurant owners to be like him. We visited him the other day.
Correct. Yeah.
So he pays like attention to detail, like the smile of a waitress, right? He makes sure that the waiters are smiling or treating you well. So I have nothing against French, but the shift that's been happening from French to English is something I appreciate, because I see advantage in it. I see that people, Moroccans, are opening up more and more to a wider world, right? Not confined in francophonie.
Correct. I believe you when you say you have nothing, no ill feeling towards the French.
No.
You're talking about the people.
No.
However,
Or the language, for that matter.
You and I, have, as Moroccans, know a thing or two about the colonial history
Of course.
of French. I mean, the colonial legacy.
Absolutely.
And we know even now, if we look at the neo-colonial theories, that Morocco has been treated like a hunting ground for the French, and it rubs us the wrong way every time we hear about it. And as a payback, almost in the back of our heads, we're like, you know what? We want this stupid language to be completely replaced, and we want in English. It's almost, and I mean, it's wrong, because what are you replacing it with? Arabic? No, you're not. You're replacing it with Tamazight? No, you're not. You're replacing it with another foreign language. I think the reason why English will be a better alternative, because 90% of research is written in English.
Absolutely.
Period.
Yeah.
That alone is more of a compelling reason for the Ministry of Education to say, you know what, nothing against you, France, okay? Although we're not going to say it out loud, but we got a lot against them. But your language is serving no purpose now, and we'd like to make the shift. And I think it would serve Moroccans a great deal. What's heartwarming now is, I've been coming to Morocco for the last 30-something years, is you see the shift. There are more English speakers. So people in their 20s, they do speak some English, if not a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I mean, I was sitting in my neighborhood in Casablanca the other day, and right next to me, the table next to me, there were a guy and a girl, and they were talking English. I mean, they were kind of going in and out of English and French and Arabic. They were doing the North African mix, okay? But mostly English, and it was perfect English, too. So that tells me there is an underground shift, that has to be stepped up by the government, by opening up opportunities for people, to learn English. So yes, I mean, we don't have anything against them personally as people, okay? But their language is not serving any purpose anymore.
It is
and that alone
for kids going to school.
Yes.
It's a waste of energy and time. Like, that's loads of subject now are being taught in French, and it's most of the time I see it's beyond what they can handle, right? It's assignments, it's texts that they cannot comprehend, but they have to, because they have to do their homework. So it's like it's more pressure on the kids. I don't like that. So part of why I'm doing this in English is that I see this as an opportunity, humble as it is, to be a sort of window to the country. Whoever, and wherever they may be in the world, who would like to, I don't know, take a look at what people in this part of the world are interested in, or what it is that they're talking about. They'll find an opportunity where they find actual Moroccans speaking about domestic issues and international issues in a language that they comprehend. They wouldn't have understood us if we did it in Arabic, or French. But in English, it's accessible.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree with you. In fact, your podcast will be a gateway, for people to come and find out about Morocco. 30 years ago or more, when we told people, when people asked us in the U.S. where we're from, and we'd say Morocco.
They said Monaco?
It's always either Monaco or, where is that? People did not even know the location. Now, Morocco is known. I mean, you have to be living under a rock not to know or to have never heard about Morocco.
Absolutely.
So Morocco is known. And in fact, when I tell people that I'm from Morocco, they usually, consistently say that, oh man, that's on my bucket list.
Wow.
You know, I'd like to go there, I'd like to visit like you wouldn't believe. And they'll even ask you for tips or advice about how to do it, what to do, what agencies to use and stuff like that. Like people are seriously contemplating coming to Morocco because Morocco is becoming known around the world. But when they come here, we don't want them to have a bad experience.
Absolutely.
Okay, that way, because when a visitor comes to Morocco, and Morocco's tourism industry is a great way, a great income for the country.
It is.
So in order to do that, we need to make sure that certain things are checked and scrutinized and vetted and verified. And one of these things is what we've talked about the other day. You know, when you have people, you never get a second chance at making a first impression, right?
Yeah.
So when a visitor comes to Morocco and gets scammed by a vendor or cannot find a public bathroom or worse yet, gets food poisoned.
Oh, yeah.
You know, these are not great experiences.
You told me you got food poisoned like 4 times?
Myself, I've got food poisoned so many times I can't even count them. Worse yet is I've gotten food poisoned twice in 1 week.
Oh my God.
Once in Agadir on a Sunday, and I came home to Casablanca on a Thursday, and I got poisoned. I came home 2 days later, but Thursday, meaning 4 days later, I got food poisoned as well.
I imagine if this were to happen, and I'm sure this happens to foreigners all the time.
But the thing is, you know, I'm very careful about the place that I eat at. You know, I go to places that are usually well-traveled, meaning there's some foot traffic there. That tells me that food is being recycled. I mean, they don't have old food, like they're selling it. Or I go to places that are, you know, very well known. They've gotten good reviews. And the place that I've gotten food poisoned at in Agadir, almost died in that time. I had to sit on queue in line there for probably 20 minutes before I got a chance to get in because there was a line. It was busy, it was hopping. Yet, I got in there and I've ordered a seafood tagine or a fish tagine, and it was bubbling with heat. Okay, and now hindsight 2020, I think it was bubbling with heat because he wanted to cook the heck out of it. It was rotten and he wanted to cook. But man, I ate that food 3 o'clock in the morning, I was dying.
God.
So yes, yeah.
Going back to the point.
Yeah, going back to the point, you know, Morocco has got to get
There's work to be done.
Straight, yes. There's work to be done,
Work
for
to
sure.
be done to maintain that attractiveness.
Absolutely.
Right?
And people
Not ruin
who are
the experience for
people who are working in the tourism industry have to be, you know, upstanding characters, not some sort of shady characters. If you're a driver, you got to be vetted and scrutinized. If you're a restaurateur, same thing. If you're in the hotel industry, one of the experiences that kind of, put a bad shade on the bringing, because it's probably a good time to say this, but I brought students to Morocco. I brought hundreds of students to Morocco.
Yeah.
And it's a short-term faculty-led program. So I would bring them here for 12 days, and we'll travel all around Morocco.
Yeah.
There's not one time in any of those trips, and these are many, many trips, where I didn't have at least 2 or 3 students get food poisoned. Wow. One time I had 12 students out of 20 get food poisoned. It was severe too. So I mean,
you never filed any complaints?
No. You're on the run all the time. You hit the ground running, right? You got 10 days or 12 days, and you have all of these activities scheduled. Okay, you can't miss a beat. You gotta keep up with the schedule.
So I have a right when I complain all the time about restaurants, Mohamed.
Oh, for sure, and that's why I think someone like yourself should probably have duplicated that experience where you start rating restaurants. You start rating restaurants. Good restaurants get a high mark.
Eunice and I talked about it.
Yeah,
and
if
bad
ever
I'm doing that concept, I'm doing it with my friends.
Oh, definitely. So you got to start something, because what happens is people usually respond well to a system of deterrence. So when you know that there's something that deters you from doing something, you would not do it. Okay, and these restaurants, if they know that their names will be mired in the mud, chances are they're going to get their act together, right?
Be careful.
Be very careful. Okay, if there's any food that stayed over or it's rotten food, they'll just toss it. Okay, they'll just have to, bite the bullet on it.
Yeah.
And that way they can generate more customers. Okay, bathrooms have to be clean.
Yes.
The food has to be good. The staff have to be well trained.
Especially now with an event of that magnitude coming, in
Of
a
course.
few years.
Yeah. I mean,
You'd have
this country
millions
is
of
going to be
tourists.
hosting the World Cup.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? This country is, this country, like I said, this country sells itself. It's got everything. It doesn't need some sort of promo. Like, we don't need to polish it. It's already good. What we need to do is we need to make sure that
To live up to that.
Yeah, live up to those standards. The people who are working in that industry, okay, they have to be. I don't know if do they have to be audited? That's not the right term, but they need to be kept on their toes. Okay, they need to be
well compensated too.
Yeah,
well tipped
already too. In imperial cities in Morocco, like Marrakesh and Fez and other imperial cities, there's what we call the tourism cops, the tourism police,
yes,
if you will. And these people, they handle all of the complaints that they get from tourists, and they do an amazing job. Okay, we don't. If they log 10 complaints a day, that is not good. Even though these complaints get addressed and solved, it's not. If we get to that point of getting all that mass of complaints, it's not good. We need to make sure that these people don't make these they don't engage in that stupidity, because sometimes they get robbed blind. I mean, these tourists get robbed blind.
Yeah, man.
And
told me some crazy stories.
Oh yeah, I mean,
ripped off.
It's gotten to the point that we've, normalized that behavior. As they got money, why not? And it shouldn't be like that.
It's okay to rip them off.
Yeah, it's not okay to rip anybody off. In fact, it is a good practice and good behavior to treat them well. That way they become a walking, talking billboards for this country.
Nice.
Okay, so the country doesn't have to spend millions of dollars putting up billboards or buying ad space abroad or doing any of that, because the country is at a place where it could sell itself. So, we just need need people in a position of power, to come out there and start, putting in place a system of deterrence where it's costly to screw people over.
It is.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm glad that it has happened in the past when a complaint comes in and the vendor, sells a product for 10 times the price of that product, and the vendor is told to refund the customer and lose the product itself.
Yeah.
So it makes it very costly for them to do that.
Yes.
I mean, that's just my 2 cents on, if you want to keep. It's very simple. I mean, it's not. Yeah. It's not brain surgery. Common sense. You want people to keep coming in. Make sure that
Treat them well. Treat them well.
Treat them well. Make sure that this sector, this industry is clean and it's staffed with people who are, outstanding, upstanding, upright people who are in the business.
And we surely have something worthwhile. We do have something,
of course,
that deserves
to be shown, to be put on display for other people to see. Without a doubt. I mean,
you and I are Moroccans. We're born here, right? And we come to a place like this,
it's mesmerizing,
and we're mesmerized.
Oh,
and you can only wonder how a foreigner feels if he or she walks into a place like this.
Listen, I go to Masjid Hassan Thani Mosque in Casablanca. It's in my city. I go there every year. There's times when I go there twice a year. And I go there as a tourist, not as a worshiper. I go there with students. And I kid you not, every time I walk in, it's almost like walking into a new place that I've never seen. The place is just breathtaking.
Yes.
It's unbelievable. And I'm saying this as a Moroccan, as someone who's born and raised here. So imagine what that place does to someone who has never been exposed to Islamic architecture.
It would blow their minds.
Oh yeah, listen, I follow these people on my Instagram or my Facebook account, and the people who have come with me to Morocco 12 years ago, they're still singing the praises of this place. I just saw someone yesterday, an old student, who posted a picture of You know the gentleman who sells books in Rabat, in Medina?
Yeah.
In Rabat?
Yeah.
She posted a picture of him sitting there and reading his book. And she said, this is the best picture I've ever taken in my life. And I just cannot, get it off my head, shake it off my brain. It's just, it's there. And that's because it stayed with her. And Rabat stayed with her. Marrakesh stayed with her. Casablanca is a place that she often talks about. Fez, of course, is
a jewel.
Yeah, it's captivating. Fez
and
is,
it definitely deserves more attention than it's getting right now.
It really does. I don't know if it's just me, but I've talked to a lot of other Moroccans and foreigners who said that Fez has something about it that no one knows. They have not found an answer. I mean, you sit there and try to kind of explain to yourself, why is it? Why is it that Fez invokes all these feelings? All that beauty that penetrates, that permeates the soul.
As you walk through
as you walk through
Medina.
Medina. We're just sitting here. Where does that come from?
Cicero, the great, what is it? He was a philosopher.
Philosopher Cicero, yeah.
He said, great is the memory that resides in places.
Correct.
So the walls have seen much, and they preceded us by centuries, and there's something there left unseen, but we definitely feel it.
No doubt. I completely agree with you. and the thing is, when you go to a place and you go to it like multiple times, after a while, it kind of loses its charm, and it just becomes this ordinary, place that, you would not lose any sleep if you didn't see it for the rest of your life, right? But you don't experience that with places that you visit in imperial cities, especially in these
Marrakesh,
big
Fez.
imperial cities. It's something that's just fascinating.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, I don't know anything about Islamic architecture, but I know one thing. I know that it's soul discipline. As you look at it, visually you see, you observe it, but you feel it. You feel beauty. You don't just see beauty, but you feel it inside you. And it's one thing that it's a conduit to this, inner peace that you start feeling. And immediately after that, there's an inner peace that overcomes you and overwhelms you. And when you talk like, even me talking like that, I feel weird saying stuff like that because, it's almost, it's borderline, unseen. How does something that you see just invokes all these feelings in you? Obviously, we do have something special here in this country. And it needs to be shown,
and cherished and recognized.
For sure.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
I totally agree.
Maybe I'll end on, I'd like you to address young people today, because there are lots of young people following me, people who, English-speaking Moroccans, who would love an advice or two from you. What would you tell them?
Man, that's one question I didn't want to get.
Come on. Come on now.
Now I feel like an imposter. Now I feel like a fraud if I ever give an advice. Man, that is the one question I was hoping I don't get. No, I'm just
all right.
kidding.
Let me make it easier.
Because I'll tell you why. Because once you start giving advice, okay, it's almost like you have a unique experience.
You do have a unique. Everybody does.
I don't. I think, for me, I can speak for myself. I think, I've never put too much thought into anything. The idea of getting a visa and going to the U.S., it's not something that I sat there and I contemplated.
No, it was an impulse.
It was an impulse. It was very impulsive. In fact, when I hopped on the plane, I started saying to myself, what the heck am I doing? Okay? The idea of going to school, the idea of working in different industry. I was in the real estate industry. Okay, I was making a lot of money in the real estate industry, and I left it because I don't know if you guys remember what happened in the financial crisis, 2008.
2007, 8, yes.
Yeah, 8 or 9. I left. I left
you
so
left
much.
Before the bubble?
I left before.
Before?
Because I knew it was going to happen.
Oh.
But I didn't know why it was going to happen. I knew something shady was going on. Something very shady was going on. Of course, I came to find out later that the federal government, the criminal enterprise, was in cahoots with the banking system, another criminal enterprise. Wow. And the one that was left holding the bag is the average citizen, like me and you. So, I got into this business, left it. I got into the publishing industry, left it. I got into higher education. I got into research. I'm still in higher education.
I know.
But
you still teach in college.
Don't be surprised if you hear, 2-3 years from now that I left it because I wanted to pursue another passion.
Yeah.
My passion has always been, to be a writer, but I want to be independently wealthy because because being a writer, I think it's a poor man's dream, right?
Or tough.
Unless you make it big.
Unless you make it big.
Unless you make it big. But I wanted to be a writer. I want to be an author.
So maybe an advice is just, don't think too much. Just go for it.
Honest to God,
try things out.
Is do not put too much thought into it. If you're a young man or woman and you are overthinking stuff, you are doing yourself a disservice. This is a phenomenon that we call analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
التفكير الذي يؤدي إلى الشلل.
Yes.
Analysis paralysis. When you think things over, okay, and this is a problem that I've had all my life, okay, but I've only felt like I achieved a certain degree of success in my life when I decided, the heck with it. I'm just going to jump in. I'm going to take a leap of faith and see what happens. Because with other stuff that I overthought, they never came through. Never seen the light of day. Okay? So my advice as a non-expert, mind you, is do not think things over.
Yes.
Because you'll be doing yourself a disservice. I think Warren Buffett was asked about, his successes. And he said he doesn't think too much about the successes. Like, of course, he's a billionaire. I think he's number 3 as far as the rich man. And he said, I think about the opportunities that I missed, that I thought too much about. Okay, where I kind of, put too much brain power into it and decided against it because that overthinking was the obstacle that kind of pulled me back. Yeah. And he said, these are the things that I regret mostly. Okay, and I think, overthinking something is the worst thing you can do. Just do it.
Yeah.
People say just do it as a cliche, but honest to God, it shouldn't be a cliche. Just do. What's the worst that can happen?
Fail.
You fail at it, right?
You fail.
Well, you're gonna fail at it anyways if you don't try it. You know what I'm saying? So
you might as well give it a shot.
Yeah, just give it a shot. Try it, especially when you're young. I tell my kids, just do anything you feel like it. Because at least, even if you fail at it, you have me as your safety net. I can always kind of give you a leg up, right?
Yeah.
So don't even think too much about your failures. Just do it. Do it. And, for me, I didn't have a safety net. I was on my own there. So I had to kind of watch my steps and watch what I was doing, okay?
So maybe the overthinking was justified.
Yeah, because you don't want to do anything big where you're going to find yourself and your kids in a shelter the next day or homeless, what have you. Of course, this is extreme cases, but I'm exaggerating here. But I didn't have the luxury to be adventurous.
That kids nowadays have.
Kids have that opportunity. Just, the world is changing and we see it. And I see in Morocco, we have this fledgling, this nascent, middle class, and this self-made people. Okay, in the old days, people who were making it, people who had the backup of of an affluent family, for example. But now, to a certain degree, I'm not saying, it always works out. To a certain degree, and that was the case. Now, you could still make it if you're a hard worker, somebody who's, we talked about the book of Malcolm Gladwell the other day, the Outliers.
Yes.
If you're willing to put in the 10,000 hours in something, that's the threshold to becoming an expert at something, then you're probably going to be an expert at that thing. So are you willing to put 10,000 hours in one thing that you actually like? What's his name? I think it's Steve Jobs who was giving a commencement speech at one of the universities in graduation. And he was asked, he said, people always tell you, follow your dreams. He said, what a dumb advice. What a stupid advice is that? He said, find out what you like and grind at it. Keep on grinding.
That's a better way of
And
looking at
I think scientists and experts, or social scientists and experts, have found out that the threshold that you have to cross is 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
What is it that you like? Bacon? Put in 10,000 hours. I guarantee you, you'll be the best baker
An
in town.
instrument,
You're playing guitar,
a language,
whatever it is, whatever. Put 10,000 hours into it. But how many people are there who are willing to put 10,000 hours in one thing?
with too many distractions nowadays.
There you go. We're talking about this, the social media and technology has created this short attention span.
Yeah.
That, as soon as we embark on one thing, we'll leave it to another thing because our brain just doesn't have the capacity to sustain whatever it is that we started. Then we move on to another thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so short attention span is a problem. Try to find a way that you don't fall in that pitfall.
Yeah, find some balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
See, Mohamed, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, it's been a great pleasure talking to you.
I made you talk. I made you talk.
No, it's I'm usually the guy who stands behind cameras. For me, it's weird to be in front of a camera.
Well,
but you know what? There's a first for everything, right?
thank you so much.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Oh, I
really
appreciate
do.
you more, man.
Thank you, man.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Take
you.
care.